Bike girl mocked in job interview for poor. Turns out to be the CEO's secret lover and future wife. Imagine walking into a room full of polished professionals, your heart pounding with nerves and hope, only to be met with sneers because you arrived on a rusty old bike. That's exactly what happened to Emily Carter, a young woman whose determination was as strong as her financial struggles. She had spent weeks preparing for this job interview at one of the city's most prestigious companies, Sterling Tech Innovations. The position would have been a dream come true, a chance to prove herself in an industry that often overlooked people like her. But instead of being judged by her skills or qualifications, she found herself mocked for something as simple as how she got there. Little did anyone in that room know, Emily's story was far from ordinary. In fact, it was about to take a turn, so dramatic that it could rival any blockbuster movie. The day started like any other for Emily. She woke up early, carefully ironed her best outfit, an affordable but neatly tailored blazer, and made sure her resume was tucked safely inside. Her bike, though old and battered, was her lifeline. It wasn't just transportation. It symbolized her resilience. Every pedal stroke reminded her of how far she'd come and how much further she wanted to go. As she locked her bike outside the towering glass building of Sterling Tech, she took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing thoughts. This was her moment, her chance to break free from the cycle of struggle. Yet, as soon as she stepped into the interview room, the atmosphere shifted. The panel of executives exchanged glances when they noticed the slight smudge of grease on her hands, a remnant from fixing her bike chain earlier that morning. One of them even smirked, making a snide comment about her unconventional mode of transport. Emily felt her cheeks burn, but she forced herself to stay composed. After all, she reminded herself, actions speak louder than words. What no one in that room realized, not even Emily, was that fate had already begun weaving its intricate web. Among the panel of interviewers sat Alexander Sterling, the enigmatic CEO of the company. To the outside world, he was known for his sharp business acumen and impenetrable demeanor. Few knew the softer side of him, the man who secretly valued authenticity over appearances. When Alexander first saw Emily walk in, something about her caught his attention. Maybe it was the quiet confidence in her eyes, despite the obvious discomfort she felt. Or maybe it was the way she carried herself, unapologetically real amidst a sea of pretense. Whatever it was, it stirred something deep within him, a flicker of recognition, though he couldn't quite place why. He watched silently as his colleagues dismissed her without giving her a fair chance, their biases clouding their judgment. And while he didn't intervene during the interview, he couldn't shake off the feeling that there was more to Emily than met the eye. As the interview progressed, Emily answered each question with poise and clarity, her passion for innovation shining through every word. Despite the mocking undertones from some of the panelists, she refused to let their negativity dim her spirit. There was a fire in her, a drive that stemmed from years of fighting against odds stacked against her. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, she had learned early on that life wasn't always fair, but she also knew that hard work and perseverance could open doors that seemed permanently shut. By the time the interview ended, Alexander found himself intrigued, not just by her answers, but by the strength she exuded. He lingered behind after the others left, flipping through her resume once more. Something about her background resonated with him, a shared understanding of overcoming adversity. And then it hit him. Emily's name sounded familiar, too familiar, unbeknownst to both of them. Their paths had crossed before, though under very different circumstances. Years ago, During a charity gala, Alexander attended reluctantly. He had met a young volunteer who left a lasting impression on him. She was warm, genuine, and radiated kindness, a stark contrast to the superficiality he often encountered in his elite social circle. They had shared a brief but meaningful conversation that night, connecting over their mutual love for art and literature. Before parting ways, she handed him a small sketch she had drawn, a simple yet profound depiction of two figures standing side by side, gazing at a distant horizon. He had kept it ever since, tucked away in his desk drawer, a reminder of the rare moments when humanity shone brighter than wealth or status. Now, staring at Emily's resume, pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. Could it be possible? Was this the same person who had unknowingly touched his soul all those years ago? Meanwhile, Emily left the building feeling a mix of emotions: disappointment, frustration, and a lingering sense of hope. She knew she had given her best, but the disdainful looks from the interviewers weighed heavily on her mind. Still, she refused to let it break her. As she unlocked her bike and prepared to head home, she allowed herself a moment of reflection. Life had taught her that sometimes things didn't work out the way you planned. But that didn't mean you stopped trying. Just as she was about to ride away, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Sterling Tech Innovations. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it, expecting either rejection or silence. Instead, she read the words that would change everything. Dear Ms. Carter, we would like to invite you for a second round of interviews with our CEO, Mr. Alexander Sterling. Confusion washed over her. Why would the CEO personally request to meet her after such a disastrous first impression? She hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to make of it, but curiosity, and perhaps a sliver of optimism, urged her to accept. Back at the office, Alexander wrestled with his own thoughts. Inviting Emily back hadn't been a decision he took lightly. Part of him worried about crossing professional boundaries, while another part argued that sometimes risks were necessary to uncover truths. He couldn't deny the pull he felt toward her, a connection that defied logic and reason. Yet as the days passed, and the date of their meeting drew closer, doubts crept in. What if she didn't remember him? What if the spark he thought existed was merely a figment of his imagination? More importantly, what if revealing his suspicions jeopardized both their futures? These questions swirled in his mind, creating a tension that was almost unbearable. Meanwhile, whispers spread throughout the company about the mysterious candidate who had caught the CEO's interest. Speculation ran rampant, with some dismissing it as mere curiosity, and others convinced there was more to the story. When the day finally arrived, Emily walked into Alexander's office with a mix of apprehension and determination. The room was spacious yet intimate, decorated with artwork that hinted at a deeper personality beneath the corporate exterior. Alexander greeted her with a polite smile. Though his eyes betrayed a hint of nervousness, they exchanged pleasantries, the air thick with unspoken words. Then, as if guided by instinct, Alexander reached into his desk drawer and pulled out the faded sketch, the very same one Emily had drawn years ago. He placed it gently on the table between them, watching her reaction closely. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Emily's breath caught in her throat as recognition dawned on her face. Memories flooded back, fragments of a fleeting encounter she had almost forgotten. But before either of them could say anything, the door burst open, interrupting the fragile moment. A frantic assistant rushed in, delivering news that would throw everything into chaos. And just like that, the story takes an unexpected turn, leaving both Emily and Alexander, and us, hanging on the edge of our seats. What was the urgent news? How will it impact their budding connection? And most importantly, can two people from seemingly opposite worlds find common ground in a world obsessed with appearances? Stay tuned for the next chapter of this gripping tale, where secrets unravel, hearts collide, and destinies are rewritten. The interruption came in the form of Alexander's assistant, breathless and pale. She clutched a folder tightly to her chest as she stammered out the news. A major scandal had erupted within Sterling Tech Innovations. A whistleblower had come forward, alleging unethical practices at the highest levels of the company. The allegations were explosive: fraudulent financial reports, questionable partnerships, and even hints of insider trading. As if that wasn't enough, the media had already caught wind of it, and reporters were swarming outside the building like vultures circling prey. Alexander's calm demeanor shattered instantly. His jaw tightened, and his fingers gripped the edge of his desk as he absorbed the gravity of the situation. Emily, still reeling from the shock of seeing her old sketch, felt the tension in the room escalate. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of the unfolding crisis pressing down on them. As the initial chaos subsided, Alexander dismissed his assistant with a curt nod, instructing her to handle the press while he dealt with the core issue. Turning back to Emily, he exhaled deeply, his expression a mix of frustration and vulnerability. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice low but steady. "This isn't how I expected today to go." Emily nodded, unsure of what to say. She hadn't signed up for this kind of drama when she applied for a job. Yet here she was, sitting in the eye of a corporate storm. Despite the turmoil, there was something about Alexander's reaction that intrigued her. He didn't seem like the cold, calculating CEO the tabloids often portrayed. Instead, he appeared genuinely troubled, not just by the scandal, but by the potential fallout for his employees and the company's reputation. It was a side of him she hadn't anticipated, and it made her wonder if there was more to the man behind the polished exterior. The conversation shifted awkwardly as Alexander tried to explain the situation without revealing too much. He mentioned the whistleblower only briefly, focusing instead on damage control and next steps. But Emily's sharp mind quickly pieced things together. Her years of navigating life's complexities had honed her ability to read between the lines. She noticed the way Alexander hesitated when discussing certain details. The faint twitch of his eyebrow whenever he mentioned the word partnerships. Something wasn't adding up, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this scandal ran deeper than anyone realized. Still, she kept her observations to herself, sensing that now wasn't the time to push for answers. Instead, she offered a tentative suggestion. Perhaps an independent investigation could help restore trust, both internally and externally. Alexander looked at her thoughtfully, impressed by her insight despite the circumstances. While the immediate focus remained on the scandal, the unresolved connection between Emily and Alexander simmered beneath the surface. Neither of them had forgotten about the sketch or the memories it evoked, yet bringing it up felt impossible amidst the current crisis. For Emily, the revelation added another layer of complexity to an already overwhelming day. Was it mere coincidence that she had crossed paths with Alexander twice in such meaningful ways, or was fate playing some kind of twisted game? As for Alexander, the discovery left him grappling with conflicting emotions. On one hand, he felt drawn to Emily in a way he hadn't experienced in years. On the other, he knew pursuing anything beyond professionalism could jeopardize not only his career, but also hers. The stakes were higher than ever, and the timing couldn't have been worse. Meanwhile, whispers of the scandal spread like wildfire throughout the office. Employees huddled in corners, exchanging theories and speculations. Some pointed fingers at disgruntled former staff members, while others speculated about rival companies trying to sabotage Sterling Tech. Amidst the gossip, Emily found herself becoming an unwitting subject of curiosity. Word had gotten out about her second interview with Alexander, and now everyone wondered why the CEO had taken such a personal interest in her case. Rumors ranged from harmless speculation, maybe she had unique skills the company desperately needed, to more malicious assumptions. One particularly nasty comment suggested she might be involved in the scandal herself, using her connection with Alexander to cover her tracks. Hearing these whispers hurt, but Emily refused to let them define her. If anything, they fueled her determination to prove herself, no matter what obstacles stood in her way. Back in Alexander's office, the two of them worked tirelessly to draft a statement addressing the allegations. It was a delicate balancing act, acknowledging the seriousness of the claims, without admitting guilt or incriminating anyone prematurely. Emily surprised even herself with how naturally she slipped into the role of advisor, offering suggestions that struck the perfect tone. Her input didn't go unnoticed. Alexander found himself relying on her judgment more than he cared to admit, impressed not just by her intelligence, but by her unwavering integrity. By the time they finished drafting the statement, hours had passed, and the sun had dipped below the horizon. Exhausted but accomplished, they shared a quiet moment of relief. For a brief second, their eyes met, and the air crackled with unspoken words. Then, reality intruded once again, as Alexander's phone buzzed incessantly with updates from his team. Just as they prepared to leave the office, a new piece of information surfaced, one that changed everything. The whistleblower had released additional documents implicating someone close to Alexander, someone trusted, someone whose betrayal would cut deeper than any scandal ever could. As Alexander read through the damning evidence, his face paled, and his hands trembled slightly. Emily noticed immediately, concern etched across her features. "What is it?" she asked softly, her voice tinged with apprehension. Alexander hesitated, torn between protecting her and sharing the truth. Finally, he handed her the document, watching as comprehension dawned on her face. Betrayal, deception, heartbreak. These words swirled in Emily's mind as she processed what she was reading. Whoever was responsible had gone to great lengths to frame Alexander, and the implications were devastating. With the clock ticking and the walls closing in, Alexander and Emily realized they had no choice but to confront the person behind their betrayal head-on. But doing so meant stepping into dangerous territory, where loyalties would be tested and secrets laid bare. As they prepared for the confrontation, the bond between them grew stronger, forged in the crucible of adversity. Yet, questions lingered in the shadows. Could Emily truly trust Alexander, given the power dynamics at play? And could Alexander risk opening his heart to someone who might not fully understand the burdens he carried? The answers lay just beyond the horizon, waiting to be uncovered. But first, they would have to face the storm, and each other, with courage and resolve. As the night wore on, the tension reached a breaking point. Every decision they made carried consequences far beyond their control. With the world watching, and their futures hanging precariously in the balance, Emily and Alexander braced themselves for what came next. Little did they know, the climax of their story was about to unfold in ways neither of them could have imagined. As the clock struck midnight, Alexander and Emily stood in his office, the damning documents spread out before them, like pieces of a puzzle they desperately needed to solve. The name at the center of it all was someone neither of them had expected: Marcus Hale, Alexander's longtime friend and business partner. It wasn't just the betrayal that stung. It was the realization that Marcus had been siphoning funds for months, framing Alexander to cover his tracks. Worse still, he had used insider knowledge to manipulate key deals, leaving Sterling Tech on the brink of collapse. Emily looked at Alexander. Seeing the pain etched into his face, she reached out instinctively, her hand brushing his. "We'll get through this," she said softly, her voice steady despite the storm raging around them. For the first time, Alexander allowed himself to believe her. The confrontation came sooner than either of them anticipated. Marcus arrived unannounced, his usual confident swagger replaced by a nervous energy. He claimed he was there to offer support during the crisis, but his eyes darted around the room, avoiding direct contact with Alexander. Emily watched him closely, noting the subtle signs of guilt, the way he fidgeted with his cufflinks, the slight tremor in his voice when he spoke. When Alexander finally confronted him, laying out the evidence piece by piece, Marcus's facade crumbled. At first, he tried to deny everything, accusing Alexander of paranoia. But as the truth became undeniable, his tone shifted from defensive to desperate. "You don't understand," Marcus pleaded, his voice breaking. "I did it for us. For the company. We were drowning, Alex. I thought I could fix things before anyone noticed." But excuses weren't enough to undo the damage. With the evidence now irrefutable, Alexander made the hardest decision of his career. He called the authorities. As Marcus was led away, his protests echoing through the halls, Emily felt a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness for the fractured friendship, but relief that justice would prevail. Yet even as one chapter closed, another began to unfold. The scandal had exposed deep cracks within Sterling Tech, forcing Alexander to reevaluate not only how the company operated, but also who he trusted. And amidst the chaos, Emily emerged as an unexpected beacon of hope. Her calm under pressure, her unwavering integrity, and her ability to see solutions where others saw only problems earned her respect, far beyond what anyone had anticipated. In the weeks that followed, Emily officially joined Sterling Tech, not as a low-level hire, but as a strategic advisor, handpicked by Alexander himself. Her role was unconventional, blending her creative problem-solving skills with the company's need for transparency and innovation. Together, they implemented sweeping reforms, prioritizing ethical practices and employee well-being. The media, once quick to criticize, began praising the turnaround, dubbing Emily the heart of Sterling Tech's revival. Behind the scenes, however, their relationship continued to evolve in ways neither of them had planned. Late-night strategy sessions turned into heartfelt conversations about life, dreams, and the future. Slowly but surely, the lines between professional and personal blurred, until one evening, Alexander broke the silence. Standing on the rooftop terrace of his penthouse, overlooking the city lights, Alexander turned to Emily with a look of raw vulnerability. "I never believed in fate," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "But meeting you twice, first at that gala, then here, it feels like something bigger than coincidence." Emily smiled, her heart pounding as she realized he still kept the sketch she'd drawn years ago. "Maybe it's not fate," she replied gently. "Maybe it's just two people finding each other when they needed it most." Without another word, Alexander took her hand, pulling her close. The kiss that followed was electric, charged with all the emotions they'd suppressed for so long. In that moment, everything clicked into place. Their love story didn't unfold without challenges. Of course, public scrutiny intensified as rumors of their romance spread, with critics questioning whether Emily's rise in the company was based on merit or favoritism. But Emily refused to let negativity define her. She worked harder than ever, proving her worth with every project she tackled. Meanwhile, Alexander stood firmly by her side, championing her contributions and defending their relationship against naysayers. Over time, their bond became a testament to the power of authenticity and trust, a stark contrast to the scandals that had once threatened to tear them apart. Months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Alexander proposed to Emily in the same parks where they had shared their first real conversation. After reconnecting, surrounded by golden leaves and the soft hum of nature, Emily said yes, tears streaming down her face. Their wedding, held a year later, was a celebration not just of their love, but of resilience, redemption, and second chances. Friends, family, and colleagues gathered to witness the union of two souls who had defied odds and rewritten their destinies. Looking back, Emily often reflected on how far she'd come, from riding her old bike, to job interviews, to standing beside one of the most influential men in the industry. Yet, she knew the journey wasn't about wealth or status. It was about staying true to herself, no matter the obstacles. Alexander, too, found a new sense of purpose. Emily had reminded him of the values he'd nearly forgotten in the pursuit of success. Together, they built a legacy rooted in honesty, compassion, and a shared vision for a better world. And so, the tale of the bike girl mocked in a job interview ended not with bitterness or regret, but with triumph and love. It was a reminder that sometimes the roughest roads lead to the most beautiful destinations. For Emily and Alexander, their story wasn't just about overcoming adversity. It was about finding light in the darkest moments and building a future stronger than anything they could have imagined alone.